Okay, in review and closing, what we talked about is now we've got probably nearly 60 or 75 different layers. If we look at all of them here, and all of them laid out in a way so we can go back and make these changes separately and make them change uniquely. Now all of this has been done in groups, so the groups are nice and neat and easily manageable as well as adjustable, because we can take these layers because they are in groups and we can actually modify the groups. We can bring the hair down as a whole, we can bring the eyes, the makeup, the group as a whole we can bring into an area that we need to make an adjustment to. Now keep in mind that I think that with any retouch like this that you want to do the retouch and then let it sit. Let it sit for a day, come back to it and tweak it a little bit more. There are things about even this retouch that I see now that I would like to change. That if this was a client-based situation, I'd probably bring in the shoulder a little bit. I'd probably adjust the eye color a little bit. I think she's a little bit too tanned, and maybe depending on the monitor I'm looking at, would depend on her if her hair is where I wanted to see it. And again, this situation is different. A lot of the examples on this particular model with this particular exercise in mind was basically because we want to show you a variety of different methods to handle a variety of different potential problems. You're not going to have all these issues to deal with in all situations. You may have some that are more extreme and some that are much less extreme. Remember always that getting it right in camera, making sure it's lit right, the moment's right, the focus is right, everything is right in camera, will minimize the need to make corrections and allow you to take the effort here that you're making in post and make it to enhance the image and make it even better, and not just bring it back to some phase of acceptable quality. So let's look at what we've covered. Go back here and let's look at, in quick review, the stuff that we discussed. So first and foremost, there are many ways to retouch a file, and depending on the results will depend on how you go about this. We looked at many ways to soften skin, to do blemish removal, and things like that. So depending on who your client is and what their desires are will depend on what you need to do. It also will depend on how good the photograph is. Typically, if you have to do a lot of heavy retouching, maybe the photograph wasn't that good to begin with. Chances are that's the case. Workflow, though, needs to be consistent. We made sure we maintain the three objectives: preview, flexibility, and lean file. We tried to make sure we maintain those things. Now I guarantee you that that file got very large. It didn't get large here because I negotiated the file size for the sake of the tutorials. But in real life, in a case that you might be working for a client, the file sizes are going to be something you're going to have to manage, and when you load pixels, you're going to have to do it as needed, and you're going to have to maybe flatten the file and use it as a stage 2. But I would recommend you working in stages, and what I say by that is if you do the skin and let's say it's gotten too large, then keep that layered file and then flatten it and use it as a stage 2. So now you've got approval on the softening of the skin, but you've got the layers if you ever need to go back. It's not as easy as just going back to a layer on one file, but it's certainly easier than starting over. So we looked at image mapping, skin, teeth, eyes, hair, shaping, makeup and skin tone, and final touch-up. We did it all in this session. So we talked about the skin, blemish removal, heel brush, clone stamp, under the eye, softening the skin, simple and more complex methods, and keeping the natural aspects of the skin tone and matching skin tone in that extra movie that we just talked about. The teeth, basically removing yellowing and brightening. Fixing problem spots, occasionally if you're dealing with braces and things, that's more extreme, and you're going to have to get grips with some of the more sophisticated tools in Photoshop to make sure you can make those changes. The eyes, we spent a lot of time on the eyes, removing and reducing veins and bloodshot eyes, which is going to vary from model to model. Color enhancements to the iris. Iris brightening, getting eye shape back through burning and dodging, ensuring size and shape, and lash extension. And finally, the eyeliner, which could go with makeup as well. And then we worked into the hair. filling in empty spots, reducing flyaways, removing distractive strands, enhancing color, and increasing shape and body with volume. And then finally shaping, bringing and dodging facial features to get that kind of more of a three-dimensional kind of look. Remember, shadows are what's going to give your image dimension. Reducing and straightening the nose, adding volume to the lips, jawline, and other subtle structures, body shape and curves. We didn't do a lot with body shape because we dealt with mostly facial features, but the same principles apply when using the liquify or transform tool when you're using Photoshop. Makeup and skin tone. The final skin tone adjustments. CMYK analysis of the skin, which we use as just an analysis, just to look at, to make sure that the numbers are in the ballpark as what they should be. And then finally just looking at the preview to make sure that the preview is as accurate as possible. And the final touch-ups. Small heel brush for fine or cloning for fine refinements. Large mistakes, you go back to the original layers. So if you find that something doesn't make sense, like when we looked at the nose and we didn't have a good selection, we went back, we made a better selection. Always making sure we go back so we've got a good solid file. This will pay dividends in the long run when you inevitably have to go back to the file and readjust for your client's needs. And my closing thoughts. Good previews are definitely essential. Keeping the file flexible will pay you dividends in the end, and lean files are easier to work with. Then the simplest way is normally the best way. So if you're yielding good results, don't think that you have to do some kind of complicated skin softening or blemish removal or eye technique in order to get good results, because you don't. The simplest way is typically the best way, as long as you're yielding the results you need. Do not overcomplicate things. Ask yourself, where and how will this be used? So is the image going to be used in a magazine or as a major ad? Does it have the potential for that? Or is it just going to be a web thing that's going to live small as a thumbnail somewhere that doesn't require the same kind of time and effort that you might put into this? Remember, we put in like 60 to 75 layers on that particular file. So all those things will help you determine where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. It's been a pleasure working you through this entire process. We didn't cover all the techniques. We've covered a heap load of them, and a lot of the techniques are going to get simpler and can simply be action based. You could build these techniques into an action set and just make sure that the numbers have not changed, but you can load in the adjustments, fill the mask, and give them the names. Naming conventions were huge. You notice from every layer we named, we put it into group and we named the group. This is because when we go back, and you will go back to these files, that you know where to go and how to get there and what is what. So, this is Chris Alvanis, and I hope you enjoyed this session of Beauty Retouching.